Okay, welcome back. So let's create our extension of the mesh model. And I'm going to split the screen between our code view and this code extension. So on the upper right-hand corner of the screen, let's click on that little plus button. And let's click on the code view. We can close the preview with Option Command Enter. And let's also press Command 0 so we'll have a little bit more real estate. Okay, and we're gradually going to transfer code from the code view to the mesh model with some minor changes. So for instance, we have this computed property view name code. So we could copy this into our extension. We could call it view name code or just view name. Either way is fine. Now I'm going to tweak this code. I want to make some changes here. So let's add an if statement, if name.isValid identifier, else do something else. So the else will be just return my mesh view. And for valid identifier, let's use name dot replacing occurrences of space with underscore. In case the user enters spaces, although that is unreasonable if we have a valid identifier. And of course, if we're unhappy with this view name implementation, we can always change it. Okay, but it will do the job. It will do the job. It's not at all clear that we really need these replacing occurrences because I probably won't allow spaces. Okay, now I want to have some computed properties related to our mesh gradient model. Okay, so we had a background, we had smooth colors, we had a gradient. So let's start with the background code. And this will be a string. So let's look at the background color. If the background color is clear, then we don't need a string because clear is the default value. So I'm just writing an empty string. Otherwise, I want a new line followed by a tab, and actually we should have a comma because we're coming from a previous line. Background, colon, and notice the colon is missing, dot, string interpolation of BG color. Now it's really easy to make mistakes in this part of what we're doing here, but when we actually copy and paste the code, we'll catch all of our mistakes. So we'll be testing this out. Now smooth colors code will be kind of similar. So if smooth colors return an empty string, because by default mesh gradient uses smooth colors. Otherwise, return this expression with a \n that we need to add a comment to, of course. And like I said earlier, we're going to need a semicolon after background. So let's paste that in. And we could create a custom function for this because we're going to be repeating this a few times. Okay, great. So now we add the colon. And now for smooth colors code, we should also add a colon and add smooth colors. And now let's say set smooth colors to false. And now I'm going to create another computed property for the color space. This will be called color space code of type string. So if color space is device, then return an empty string because that's the default. That's the default option to be device. Otherwise, I'm going to copy this code over here. Return smooth colors false, but instead of smooth colors, we should have color space. Now later I'm going to change this to perceptual. For now I'm going to leave it as false. And now I want to create some simple code which is based on our mesh gradient code. So let's set simple code as follows. So I'm going to define a variable called result. And let's copy this string from the split screen. So we have mesh gradient width, height, points, colors, background. I'm actually going to remove the background at some point, and instead of columns, COL and ROW, because that's the name of the field in the mesh gradient, in the mesh model. Now we don't have points code and we don't have colors code. So I am going to the code view on the left half of the screen, and we can copy points as code, colors as code. We also had point as code, in other words, singular. So I'm going to just cut these methods out and paste this in the mesh model extension. Now we still need point as code, right? Cannot find point as code of the code view and paste it into the extension of mesh model. And let's comment out the preview code just so we won't have so many errors. I'll leave the preview, but I just commented out the code view. It's really a minor point. I just don't want to see so many error messages. And now let's go full screen. And let's replace points code using points as code. And then we can enter our points, the row value, and the column value from the mesh model. Okay, great. Now let's enter colors as code. I'm going to press in color names, row, and column. Okay, great. So let's return a result. And now let's add the background code to the result. So result plus equals to background code, result plus equals to smooth colors code, and result plus equals to color space code. And finally, let's add a carriage return with parentheses. Now we need to remove the parentheses from the mesh gradient string, and also let's remove the background, so we won't have background twice. And now we're set with our mesh gradient. Now I have a typo with simple code, so I'm going to rename it. And also background code, I prefer that would be in camel case. So I can right click, refactor, rename, and replace this. So just capitalize code. And it seems like it didn't work very well. Sometimes the refactorization doesn't work well. So I'll go to the source, change the name, and we're set. And now let's jump back to the code view, and we can remove points code, colors code. So gradually we're just going to get rid of all of these string operations within code view. Now we're going to need to transfer this to our extension for the extended version. Okay, but let's leave this as it is for now, even though it does look messy. We'll take care of that. Now, I do want to look at the mesh gradient again. So we have some code for mesh gradient. Let's say mesh gradient. I want a real mesh gradient. So this one, let's press Command click on this. And I want to go to gradient color space again. With color space, we have device, which is the default value, and perceptual. So I'm going to copy this from here. Okay, I'm going to copy this. And let's go to our code extension. So code extension, I pressed Command Shift 0. And earlier, when I was at color space, I set the color space to false for the case that we're not device. In other words, for the case of perceptual, but this should not be perceptual, it should be dot to perceptual, okay? And again, as soon as we actually consider a real example, we'll know immediately if there's a mistake. It's very easy to miss a colon, misplace a comma, etc. And of course, it might make more sense to create a custom function that creates this comma \n tab, and maybe a colon, something here and that. But I didn't feel like creating a custom function for just these 3 cases, but it is something worth considering. Okay, so in the next lecture, we'll work on the extended version of our code. So have an amazing day, and see you next time.